Hey, this is Craig from the editing room floor. Not sure what quite happened with Hal's mic at the beginning here, but it is blowing out quite a bit for like the first 10, 11, 12 minutes. And then it kind of settles in a little bit. So sorry about that, but I'll try to be a little bit more judicious on the ones and twos to make sure that we're not blowing out people's eardrums. But just want to let you know I am aware of it and it did get resolved, but it is a little fuzzy for the first 10 minutes or so. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this episode. Welcome to the Red Rose Film Club, a movie podcast that examines the wide world of cinema through a perpetually lefty pinko commie soy boy cuck Antifa super soldier filter, but more specifically, we love movies and want to create a podcast that would appeal to the disparate tastes of our liberal, leftist, socialist, communist, Marxist, and Leninist friends. Red Rose Film Club is for leftists of all stripes who don't know what to talk about at parties other than movies and politics. My name is Craig, and I work in public education and am passionate about social justice and workers' rights. And I decided I want to change it up and have a fun intro too, so today we're going to talk about Ocean's 11, also known as How to Blow Up a Pipeline. And I'm with...
Ooh, and I'm Hal, who's surprised by the switch up. In 2024, I'm, as previously referenced, switching it up and taking it back to the basics. I'm a socialist, trying to grapple with our world by reflecting on it through art, theory, and the will of the people. All things that will be directly engaged today.
Hell yeah. Before we get into our usual bits and whatnot, yesterday was Craig's actual birthday.
Hey. So we're introducing a Craig's Birthday Minute, where he's going to talk up a movie or three from his birth year that he wants to put you onto. So take it away, Craig.
I shall. And I did look, so I think I told you this, I don't remember if it was on the pod or not, but I, over some break time that I had, spent a lot of it making lists of my ranking my movies by year. So now I have it going back to 1915, and then each year a different sheet in the spreadsheet. So now I can go right to my birth year, 1997. And
2003. This woke little baby wasn't before the advent of 9/11.
I was born in 1988. So here are from my newly created list ish. My top three of 1988, and you did say put them onto, which I realized my top three are they are not obscure from 1988. So my number three is one that we've done on this pod before, which is John Carpenter's They Live.
Nice, excellent choice.
Yeah, we've talked about that one a lot. My number two is probably the movie that I've seen the most in my entire life, which is John McTiernan's Die Hard.
Did you start that in the womb?
Love. No, my dad's never seen Die Hard, and he has a weird boomer hatred for Bruce Willis. Him and his brothers all hate him. I think there's some...
Interesting. Maybe it's divisive along the boomers, because my boomer dad
loves
him.
I feel like, so was your boomer dad a hippie?
Absolutely not.
So my boomer dad was, and his brothers were, and I feel like there's a rebellion against a good looking jock type guy that was coming up around the same time.
That tracks.
I think that's what it is. So that was my second favorite movie of my birth year, and my first favorite movie of my birth year is Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ, a movie that I fucking love. Also, I love that, what's his face? Keith. Nope.
Harvey
Keitel. I said Keith. I just love his accent and his whole performance in that he's just hey, I'm a fucking guy from Brooklyn still. Get over here, Jesus. What Judas. The fuck? Yeah. No. He's, wait, he's not Judas. He's John. Am I right?
I'm almost positive he's Judas, because this has been a thing we've talked about.
Is it really?
Before.
I swear to God, I thought he was, oh my God, I spelled that so wrong. Well, I called him Keith a minute ago, so I don't.
Lady Gaga's Judas.
Oh, he does play Judas. Fuck.
Yes.
Well. So Keith is Judas is great in that movie.
Keith is John the Baptist.
But yeah, I realized 1988 is a pretty solid year for movies, because the ones I didn't talk about that I love are The Thin Blue Line from Errol Morris, Dead Ringers. The Vanishing, Child's Play, Serpent in the Rainbow, Midnight Run, Night of the Demon, Beetlejuice. This is a pretty good year, 1988.
You're just naming the hits.
Yeah. It's also Twins and Jack's Back in 1988, which are my 2 lowest movies on my 1988 list.
What is Jack's Back?
It's terrible. It's a horror-y thriller where James Spader, if I'm remembering this correctly, James Spader plays like a reincarnated version of Jack the Ripper, but like being like sleaze James Spader.
Okay, but is he hot in it?
Yeah. It's hot James Spader. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I'm open to it.
But yeah. So yeah, thanks for the birthday wishes.
Yeah, happy birthday. Our on this pod, our birthdays are clustered at the beginning of the year. So in a couple of weeks,
we can do your birthday, well, 2002.
Yes. No, 1960.
I wanted to make you older than my fake year.
I'm one of those hippies.
Hell yeah. That hates.
No, it'll be 1991, so it'll be hard for me to avoid talking about Silence of the Lambs, but I'm going to do my best.
Yeah.
So, Craig, what other pop culture are you getting into these days?
So I've watched a few documentaries that I don't necessarily think were good so much as, like, interesting. Like, I think
strong out the gate, love it.
I think both the topics are really, really interesting, and I had fun watching them, but afterwards I was, like, irritated at certain things. I mean, the first one's just a little low rent, and that is a movie called The United States of Insanity.
Where did you watch this? Because I'm intrigued.
It's free on Prime.
All right.
See, so this movie is a documentary about I meant to ask, are you like a juggalo, or are you down to clown? Just in general.
Say that I'm down to clown adjacent by nature of many of my interests.
Yeah.
Wrestling is a really big thing amongst the juggalos, and so there's a lot of
crossover in that.
Yeah. But I would not say that I myself have dabbled in. Yeah, no,
I was scared of them. I was
example.
scared of them when I was a kid because I was like a little church kid, and they were. I was just scared of them.
Your own personal satanic panic.
Yeah, for real. Well, this will not make you like their music anymore, I don't believe, but I do find them quite charming and funny, and like I like both those guys a lot. But the documentary is about how the FBI several years back classified Juggalos, the name given to ICP fans, as a gang. Now I'll say the movie is, it's a little, like I said, a little rent, and also it was released before the resolution of this case, so it feels a little just anticlimactic. Like it leads to like they are continuing in court, which since the Insane Clown Posse has won that lawsuit and they have since recanted the classification or whatever. But it is a really good insight into how like the FBI is basically weaponizes their whole entire system to target like lower working class people. Like there's stories is really heartbreaking. There's like stories of people losing custody of their children because they were listed as, because they had like a Hatchet Man tattoo and got listed as gang affiliated, like losing their jobs, like getting arrested, going back on, like being on probation and having to go to prison because they were affiliated with a gang. It's just super, super fucked up. Yeah, but I will also say that Violent J's mom is awesome as shit. She's just like, she is just a mom, but like is so proud and like I don't know. I think it's important for moms to be proud, and I think if I was a mom and Violent J was my son, I might struggle with that a little bit. But she's just like such a like sweet lady about it, and is just like fully on her son's side. And then they'll like ask her questions about like, what about the song where he's like, I'm gonna chop your head off with a chainsaw, and she's like, it certainly is descriptive, or like whatever. She's just
it's
like
artistic expression.
Yeah, which right, like it is, and that's a big part of it too, is that like kind of the movie talks a lot about the delineation between like artistic expression and real life, and the fact that like there are horrorcore rappers, that doesn't mean they're like gonna do this
committing
shit.
acts of violence.
Yeah.
Right.
But at the same time, those songs also suck, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't want to listen to that shit, but I fully respect their rights and ability to dance together in a mud pit for a week while playing it.
Hell yeah. I want to go to the Gathering of the Juggalos so fucking bad. Like, I want to go so bad. I don't even like music festivals, but I want to go so bad.
dirty to me.
It does. It does.
on
Yeah.
what
I
have
need to get a hotel nearby or something. I don't want to do the camping thing because that. But yeah.
I welcome all people finding others that they can connect with in the spirit of family.
Whoop whoop.
Whoop whoop indeed.
And the other one I watched is I also think is kind of like low-key shitty, but it was also interesting, which is this new Netflix series. It's like a 3-episode docuseries called American Nightmare. Have you seen that?
I've not seen it, but I had a friend describe it to me in depth, which is oftentimes my relationship to true crime documentaries at this point. Someone will be like, "Do you watch that?" And I say, "No, but feel free to describe it to me in depth."
That's the perfect way to have watched this one because I was a little irritated with it, but the story is very interesting. It's if you remember the real life Gone Girl, there was this weird case where this completely implausible story of a woman and her boyfriend like being woken up in the middle of the night at gunpoint by a dude in a mask and like doing and saying all this weird shit, and he tied up the boyfriend and kidnapped the girlfriend, and then just randomly like a week later the girlfriend showed up 400 miles away at her parents' house, and the media was immediately like, real life Gone Girl, faked the kidnapping. Yeah, and she didn't. This story was insanely implausible, but it really did happen. Like, there was this serial rapist out there that was doing this and kidnapping people, and she was not only not believed by the police, but like a crusade against her for filing false reports, and like it just really highlights the misogyny of the police and that kind of shit. Now, the reason I think it kind of sucks is because it's critiquing the media's role in this too, while also, I feel like, especially the first episode, fully capitalizing on the like fact that everyone thought she was faking. Like, I didn't know shit about this story, and the whole time I was like, damn, this woman's crazy. Like, the first episode, I was like, this woman's crazy, because they are painting it in the first episode like it's almost entirely from the boyfriend's perspective. They don't even acknowledge that she is even alive or in the documentary until the second one. So they are fully building it in that first episode like she faked it. And to me, that just seems a little sleazy, given that the like thesis of the story is the way that the like media sensationalizes it. And then I feel like the docuseries kind of does the same thing.
Right, is trafficking in the same
thing it's trying to critique. Yeah, right. Yeah. But interesting, but I think low-key kind of shitty. So anyways, that was not a rave reviews from my recently watched.
Here's this thing that I love, but also good. Some of these motherfuckers need to be knocked down a peg, you know?
For sure. But yeah, whoop whoop. That one was good, and like it's not great, but that one was the Insane Clown Posse one. I feel like is a little bit. It's got a fighting spirit that I enjoyed. What about you? What have you been watching?
So I have 2 movies listed here. The first is an old one. The second one is a quite new one. So the older one, I watched Tokyo Drifter for the first time. It's a 1966 picture directed by Seijun Suzuki. Narratively, it follows pretty standard gangster film tropes. It's about a former Yakuza member who's like mentor, who was the head of his particular Yakuza gang, has decided to go straight and to stop engaging in criminal enterprises, but they're really not able to extricate themselves from the criminal network that they're part of. And so there's lots of the machinations and them taking an action and then it being there's a counteraction and they have to strategize and evolve around that. And it's punctuated by violence. What is not standard in it is how it accomplishes this with just wicked gorgeous style and through like really dynamic and sometimes fantastical direction, by which I mean like the directing. I don't remember Tarantino talking about this movie in Cinema Speculation, his book, but I feel like he like has to love this movie because it feels to me like it very much inspired Pulp Fiction visually in many ways. It absolutely joins my pantheon of like rewatchable gangster flicks.
Is this the one with the lead actor that looks a bit strange, like almost like he has like chipmunk cheeks or like cotton balls?
He's kind of baby. He's younger, but he wears like a powder blue suit. Is his thing. And it's like even when he's been in a fight, he's like his powder blue suit is like pristine. Yeah. It was really fun. I liked it quite a lot. And if you like gangster movies, you should watch it. And I am definitely, need to push myself to watch more stuff in the kind of Yakuza vein, because I love gangster films so much, and I'm obviously doing myself a disservice by it not being more casting a wider net in terms of where that stuff is coming from. And this was exquisite. The other movie, which is much newer, I want to talk about The Zone of Interest.
Hell yeah, I've not seen it, but I'm so excited to eventually see it.
So, I think that it's pretty hard not to make very obvious, like, banality of evil level kind of analysis here. But I do think there is like a very particular facet of that kind of argument that's driven home by the way Jonathan Glazer directs this movie, which is that it's like very surveillance oriented. Much of the movie takes place in a home where there was none of the directing crew or camera crew was in the house. They had stationed cameras everywhere. So it doesn't look like Traffic, for example, where we talked about like it's on a surveillance feed, but it has a very alienated perspective because the camera is very rarely moving. Like it cuts between different shots, but there's not necessarily a lot of camera moving within a shot. And so it feels like the family is being surveyed. And so for me, the important thing is it leads to this sense of like emotional, intellectual, social, political, and most essentially for how this movie functions, spatial alienation from the site of domination and exploitation, and thus from the victim. So the whole point of the movie is that it's a Nazi family who is benefiting from the exploitation, domination, violence, etc., enacted against victims of the Holocaust, specifically at Auschwitz, but they never see those people.
Right. Okay.
So, the wife played by Sandra Hüller, who also starred in Anatomy of a Fall that came out this year.
I need to see that.
That bitch having a crazy fucking year.
She's the main.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's nuts. I was like, what? I didn't know that she started it, and then the movie started, and I was like, damn, she really had a year, huh? But like, she gets like a fur coat very early on in the movie that someone just brings to her before maybe fully situate where you are. And you're like, yeah, that was stolen from someone who's currently like being murdered at Auschwitz. But we don't ever see. None of that's articulated. It's just embedded in the movie. Right. It's a very formalist film. It holds you at a distance. You're kind of held in suspension as this study of this family unfolds in front of you. And to me, the thing about it that's most powerful is that there's an emphasis on labor exploitation and expropriation. Like, this is a family that's enriching themselves on the back of those that are held prisoner at Auschwitz. And it examines that in a pretty unique way relative to other films I've seen. I think last time we recorded, like when we recorded the Traffic episode, I talked a little bit about The Damned, which I had just watched, the Visconti film from the 60s. And I feel like these two make a very interesting, like, two sides of the same coin. But whereas Visconti's The Damned is very much like lush and about like the like decadence and degeneracy of a German family enriching themselves on the back of the Holocaust, like, and war. This movie does it in a much more cold, alienated way. And it feels to me, the movie I would say that this movie feels most similar would be Haneke's The White Ribbon. Have you ever
I've never seen
I
like Haneke a lot, but I've never seen The White Ribbon.
It is quite good. And The White Ribbon is a little slightly less literal, because it's very broadly what happens in The White Ribbon is like there is a town that is experiencing unexplainable, weird, violent acts, and it's like a small German town, and it is clearly metaphor,
right?
Whereas this is not metaphor; it's very.
Is it based on real people? The Zone of Interest.
That's a good question. I don't know. The family in it is like the head commander of Auschwitz.
Yeah,
and it is, the house is like literally immediately outside of the walls.
Yeah.
Like you see the, you know, it in the background basically.
Fuck, I gotta see this.
Also, the lead actor in The White Ribbon and the lead actor in The Zone of Interest are the same actor, the same German guy. I don't know. It's literally like those are the two things he's been in. I did not write down his name. But in fact, I was like, I'm watching the movie. I'm like, this reminds me a lot of The White Ribbon. I was like, that guy looks kind of familiar. And then I got out of the movie. I looked it up and I was like, ha. So,
Christian Friedel.
Yes. He plays the father in Zone of Interest. And in The White Ribbon, he plays the teacher.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, those are
you a
kinda
Jonathan Glazer fan in general?
I
think he's only made like 4 or 5 movies.
This is his 4th feature.
Yeah, and I've not
believe.
seen Birth, but I've seen the other ones.
Yes, and I like Birth and Under the Skin.
I fucking love Under the Skin.
Is quite good. I think that for me, he doesn't make movies that I want to dive into repeatedly. So it is hard for me to say, like, that is someone that I'm a massive fan of. But he makes.
His shit is interesting. Yeah. It's
good.
Yeah.
It's just
Did you
not.
like Sexy Beast?
I have not seen Sexy Beast.
Oh, Sexy Beast is so fucking good. I love Sexy Beast.
I've not seen Sexy Beast.
Did you like the Jamiroquai video?
Yeah, I do love the Jamiroquai. I very weirdly, in 2020, during lockdown...
Like,
no, the video is good. But in 2020, one of my, like, lockdown psychoses was getting, like, really into Jamiroquai.
Do you know what mine was? This is way less cool.
I don't think it's cool to listen to Jamiroquai in 2020,
well, I haven't
just so we're clear.
Mine yet.
Okay.
Mine was, do you remember the band Lynn? I know, yeah, to you, if you steal my sunshine.
Oh, yes, Len.
Yeah.
Yes, L-E-N, yes. Okay.
I don't remember.
I feel like these are equivalent, by the way.
I think Jamiroquai is talented in a way that Lynn is not.
Maybe so, but they're from a similar era.
Definitely, yeah. But the reason I got so obsessed with Lynn, like I was always obsessed with Lynn for this reason, because if you watch if I say the Lynn video, do you remember that video?
Of Steal My Sunshine? Yeah.
It's them in like Miami maybe, and like riding on scooters, but the two voices of Lynn, the like
it's
singers,
kind of bleached out, isn't
a little bleached out, and they are brother and sister. And if you watch that video, if you watch that video, they are like...
Yeah, they're like dancing on each other.
Yeah, it is the weirdest fucking thing. I don't remember why I got so into that in COVID, but I was like showing everybody. I was like, check out this Lynn video.
I think what happened with me and Jamiroquai is like, there's always been some song, like Virtual Insanity is a good song. Also Canned Heat, classic for those center stage fans of us out there. A movie I've seen a cajillion times. And so I think I was just like... I want the sensation of feeling like I'm at a party while I'm like drinking under my carport.
Right.
And so I think that is what sucked me into it. But one of the weirder media things that I did during that time was just like listen to a lot of Jamiroquai.
Hell yeah. I will also say Jonathan Glazer did the music video for what I think is one of the best songs written of all time, which is the Nick Cave song Into My Arms, which is a fucking beautiful, gorgeous song. It's not like a flashy video or anything. It's like him at a piano, if I remember right.
I cannot say that I like am a Nick Cave listener at all. I
understand, like he is. It is an odd voice. It is an odd, like, he's an odd guy in general. Like, I get it.
I just have a hard time with like music that is overwhelmingly slow and sad.
Yeah.
Like those two things in combination.
Which is
sad music that's aggressive.
Yeah.
Is much more.
See, I can live in the slow sad music verse. Like I love that shit. Like, okay, this is gonna sound really cold, but his son died fairly tragically.
Okay.
Maybe 10 years ago. And he wrote an album called The Skeleton Tree after that. And it is fucking depressing and sad and like one of the most beautiful fucking albums ever written. It's mostly, and it's weirdly like him going away. A lot of it is like him almost spoken word. It's so fucking good. I love Nick Cave. Like, I understand, like, he's not everyone's cup of tea, but, like, I love every era of Nick Cave. The weird, recent, more, like, spoken word, really drag, like, Nick Cave, and that, like, weird 80s shit. Like, I just love Nick Cave in general. But Into My Arms, I think, is, like, one of the most beautiful songs ever written, and I love it so fucking much, and Jonathan Glazer did the video for that, too.
Right. Well, you know, shouts out to dudes that started out in music videos and then make a good transition.
Hell yeah.
We've talked about Fincher a lot. I love, you know, Spike Jonze is...
David LaChapelle.
Yeah.
Not
he
a
doesn't
filmmaker.
make features.
Did you see that I didn't see this, but I read it, that at the Grammys, whoever presented the award to Dave Chappelle
said Dave
LaChapelle. Yeah.
I don't...
Which, congratulations to Dave Chappelle, by the way. Grammy winner. We love him here at... we don't?
No, sorry. Well, obviously, no, I do not love Dave Chappelle. The reason I was looking confused is because I was like, it was Jim Gaffigan. But no, Jim Gaffigan was at the Golden Globes. They introduced a stand-up category.
Okay.
And also,
because they
Dave
started
Chappelle
that this
didn't
year.
win it.
Who did? It was someone crazy,
I don't remember.
Right? Like,
every single person that was nominated was like, you guys
they
don't
all have
understand comedy at all. It's
and
like
their special is all like triggered.
Yeah, well, it was just
politically
like
incorrect.
All the most famous riches, which is very classic Hollywood Foreign Press. Like, that's what the Hollywood Foreign Press does, is they're like, who is going to come shake our hands and say hello to us at a party and make us feel cool? We shall vote for them.
Yep.
So glad to see that the old fogies haven't changed.
Hell yeah.
All right, Craig. So let's talk about some current events for this episode. We're just going to talk about what you want to raise because it's something I'm down to talk about too.
Hell
and
yeah.
also because I wrote a lot for later in the episode. So what's going on in the world that's got you celebrating or living in despair?
Well, this is maybe a little bit of both. Like, I mean, the reason that this happened is obviously awful, but maybe this is a good thing. But we are now, for the first time ever, there is no McMahon involved in the WWE, formerly WWF. If no one knows what we're talking about, Vince McMahon has finally been completely ousted from the WWE following a new lawsuit.
For the second time in the last 18 months.
The ousting? Yes. Following a new lawsuit containing allegations of sexual harassment, rape, and trafficking. Wherein Vince McMahon was basically pimping out this person to a wrestler who we pretty much know to be, but allegedly, Brock Lesnar, who's also a piece of shit.
And staff members, it's a report, you know, the lawsuit makes claims that he's sending and or showing her naked photos that he was basically like extorting her for. That's not the legal word, but like harassing her at threat of like under duress of not having a job, basically, to show and send naked pictures to just like random members of the crew behind the WWE. I mean, it's harrowing, disgusting, filthy shit. But I'm glad that he's gone. But I had not been watching WWE for years because none of this is new, and he's a really evil man and has been. So it's a little hard for me to be enthusiastic about it when it feels like it was just simply the tipping point for them to feel like the legal liability was too great anymore. I mean, he was known in the fucking early 90s or late 80s, like when was that? No, sorry, in the early 80s, to like basically help covering up Nancy Argento's death at the hands of alleged death at the hands of Jimmy Snuka. Like he
sexually
was
assaulted the first ever female WWE ref.
Right. There's a WWE diva, 'cause that's what women wrestlers were called at the time, who like struggled with substance abuse and like ultimately completed suicide, who is like been rumored forever that he was doing all of these things to her. Like, he is not a good man. And I have a really hard time with men in wrestling, whether that be marks, the fans, or the various people who work in WWE, the wrestlers who continue to wrestle for them, especially when there are more competitors now, to act like this is the straw that broke the camel's back when it's all been known information. Yeah. Like, it's just, I have a hard time with that.
Yeah. I mean, he's been an asshole for years. And, well, another reason I want to bring this up is because my wife got me for my birthday a book that I know you read, which is Ringmaster. The kind of biography, the non-WWE sanctioned biography of Vince McMahon.
The Raw.
Yeah, and I'm tearing through this thing. I got it just a couple days ago, and I think I'm about halfway through.
Nice.
And yeah, it's just an interesting time to read that book. I mean, considering that, we've come full circle and his reign at the WWE is officially over, but to see kind of the same tactics, the same things, and like read about how he's been doing not just sexual assault, but the way he has approached kind of protecting the business in the same way over years and years and years. It's just very interesting to see it finally crumble and him lose control of the narrative that he like held so tightly to for so long.
I think, yes, it is definitely interesting to watch it crumble after literal decades of seemingly like him being Teflon Don, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I think one of the other things that makes WWE, and we'll see how things evolve and what the other fallout is from this, but one of the other things that makes WWE very hard to watch for me is that Vince had held the stylistic and narrative decisions of long, WWE in a fucking vice grip. And so much about the quote unquote sports entertainment model of wrestling is indivisible from his predilections. And so it's also just like this form of wrestling that is not my personal preference. And to know that it is so deeply tied to this fucking sick, disgusting man, it's rough. And I hope nothing but horrible things happen to him.
Hey,
and that
you're here.
I hope that there's an actual accounting and full purging of all of the people who've buttressed him over the last several decades. And I want Triple H to stop going to their fucking bullshit kayfabe pressers and acting like it's a cute joke to say, like, just simply say it's an active legal case and I can't comment, rather than I want to focus on all the good things that are. Fuck you, stand the fuck up and acknowledge that you're managing like a multi-billion-dollar company that has wrought like horrible destruction and has literally caused people's deaths. Like, I just want, and I don't know, accountability, maybe.
And reading this book, it's clear to see how he got away with shit for so long, because part of his goal in running the WWE was deregulating so many of the things that would keep him in check and keep him from doing.
And no competitors, right? For so long. If you have no competitors, like, I think so much of the labor side of things is that people for so long couldn't go anywhere else. It was not possible to do this basically up until like maybe the early 2010s is when like independence and also New Japan started being more dominant, and like you could actually make a living on that. Prior to that point in time, you could not be a wrestler basically after he demolished the territory system. There's
nowhere else to go or do. And so as someone who is a current WWE watcher, this is a very interesting time. Have you been following the WWE non-Vince drama with Cody and The Rock and Roman Reigns?
I have, yes.
So it's because they've seemingly kind of like tucked their tail in between their legs and reversed course, because, so for non-wrestling fans, basically Cody Rhodes, son of legendary Dusty Rhodes, has been doing this song and dance for like a year and a half now that he's got to finish the story and win the championship that his dad never won.
And also, like, as the kind of short background to that, even beyond his father, Cody is one of the wrestlers that was involved in starting AEW, All Elite Wrestling, the other, like, the main competitor to WWE in the United States. And he was one of the executive vice presidents, helped start it, and he went turncoat.
I was gonna say, do AEW fans not like Cody?
I mean, so I like Cody because I think he's a good wrestler and he's good on the mic. So at the end of the day, like, he
does what he needs
like
to.
him. And I understand. I think that's, real classic wrestler. You go into business for yourself. You got to do what you got to do to make it work for you. And so I understand that, and I don't like hold it against him. But I do think it is really funny that the whole reason why he left for WWE was because he was basically, Cody had been a babyface. He'd been the hero at AEW for a long time. The crowd started to turn against him, and he didn't lean into it and do a heel turn.
Right.
And he made that mistake. And then the crowd continued to turn against him. And then when his contract was up, he went, fuck this. And he dipped over to WWE because he clearly believed that he was going to get the title shot.
Right.
And then he had the title shot at WrestleMania
last year
and did not win.
Yep.
So that is also, even beyond Dusty Rhodes, his father, and completing his legacy, the other narrative here is completing his story.
Right,
and being able to, like, say, I left the company that I helped start after talking this big talk about being anti-WWE and blah, 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 to actually, like, go and be the champion of that other place, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, so the place we're at now is that everyone thought, well, he didn't get it last year. He's definitely going to get it this year, and we're leading up to WWE, and then WWE basically had a whole segment where they had Cody step aside because The Rock is going to fight Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, and the fans fucking mutinied and were furious, and they basically reversed course, and they're like, never mind, it's back to Cody and Roman. So.
And I do think that decision to put The Rock forth is totally entwined in the Vince McMahon shit because, like, it was an attempt to gain media attention and like deflect.
And what I feel is interesting and not necessarily intentional, but The Rock is basically making, maybe for the first time ever, a heel turn in the WWE right now at the same time that Vince is out, like the guy that those two were synonymous in the 90s with WWE. And it's just a very interesting, I don't know if the matches are going to be good or if the storyline will be good, but the, like, behind the scenes that this shit with The Rock is happening at the same time that Vince is leaving, where their stories were so intertwined, it's just an interesting, I don't know. There'll be an interesting book or two written about it, I feel like.
That is almost almost certainly true. And I do think there is something interesting, taking kind of a step back, maybe for folks that aren't marks like we are and don't care about wrestling, is that...
Fuck you. Oh, sorry.
Is that, The Rock was at the top of the media pile, right? He... had accomplished being literally the highest paid actor in the history of the universe, right? As far as we know, assuming that there's not some alien rock, right, out on Planet X in the distant past, making twice as much money, more money than God even. But then he has kind of reached this point of, like, oversaturation, where he... like, Black Adam happens, right? Black Adam comes out.
Oh, no, we didn't. Honestly, I forgot that came out. I feel like that's still a, gonna be out soon movie.
So I have to say, like, sidebar, Black Adam, I think, has some really interesting stuff in it. Like, he's almost like a, like, hashtag anti-colonial resistance figure. Like, the character itself has, like, some really interesting stuff in it, but it just so clearly, again, to reflect on the similarities of Vince McMahon, can't fucking let it go. Like, has to have a goddamn again, vice grip on all decisions, everything. Like, it's been widely reported that The Rock, like, has it in his contracts that he can't lose fights, that people can't beat him in fights, right? Like, he just cannot, like, actually be an actor. He can only be The Rock.
The brand of The Rock.
Yes, the brand of The Rock. So I think there's something really interesting here in him going back and not just showing up once, right? But like
he's been on a few
he's
episodes
been there pretty
recently.
more frequently. There's something interesting there of like I'm just curious to see how that plays out in terms of like what a superstar, and I don't mean a WWE superstar, I mean like a superstar that extends beyond WWE.
Worldwide.
What that does for his branding. Like, is it a reset? Does it continue to make him basically burn out? Do people that liked him in the action movie context now, like, you can go from wrestling to that, but you can't go backwards and then try and bounce back? Like, I'm just really curious to see
really, like, interesting.
What happens there, you know?
Yeah. And if the wrestling doesn't work out for him, then he can always hit up that next Republican National Convention. The Rock spoke at the 2000 Republican National Convention, folks. I think we've talked about that before, but it's still the weirdest fucking thing.
I view that as a basically, like, pure class interest thing, which is not. I'm not saying
baby too, but not to say that you like still shouldn't be responsible for your decisions or whatever. But he was so young, and it's just an oddity at this point.
I don't think he's an ideologue, is my point. Which again is not an excuse or me saying like, oh, he's a great guy by definition. But I just don't think he's like. I don't think he's greatly moved by abortion. You know what I mean, or something like that.
Did they find weapons of mass destruction? It doesn't matter if they found weapons of mass destruction. So stupid. Sorry, that was for wrestling fans. Goddamn, I blew out that mic, didn't I? Oh my God, look at the levels on that one. I'm so sorry, listener. But hell yeah. So what did we come here to talk about today?
Okay, hold on. Let me say this is the last thing, not in the news section, but I just want to put this over. I did, listener, buy a Blake's Heights. Drink one of them. You can't say it. A Blake's hard cider that is the witch themed.
Hell yes.
It's called Black Phillip, and it's blood orange and cranberry hard cider. So I just want to put that over.
What is
real quick,
thou like to live deliciously? I love that shit. The witch is a favorite of mine.
I love Eggers. Like I am all in on him. In fact, like I think I haven't purchased or reserved our tickets yet
for the Nosferatu movie he's doing.
But well, I mean that's not going to release till the fall. Oh. But
he has another one coming out?
No. Oh. AMC is doing in the month of February an A24 re-release every week.
Oh, cool.
And the end of the month they're doing the Lighthouse. So I think I'm going to make Mike go see it again.
I need to do that. I only saw The Witch in the theaters. I did not see The Lighthouse or The Northman in theaters.
Yeah, I want to say it's like a ghost story. The Lighthouse, and I forget what the other two are, but it's like it's all different. It's just like A24 is the theme. Yeah. So like The Lighthouse is the only Eggers that they're. I have not seen it.
I like A Ghost Story a lot. It came out right at the time that we learned that Casey Affleck is like a shitty motherfucker. But I like that movie a lot. It's a really like the central conceit I quite love, and that he's a ghost that is literally just wearing a sheet on his head.
Is that the early David Gordon Green?
No, this is David Lowery.
Yes, because it's the motherfucker who directed The Green Knight, which I love.
Yeah, Ghost Story. Yeah. You would like Ghost Story. Ghost Story is cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give it a chance. Probably hard sell on Mike, but why'd you have to spill your beans? That we can run it back. That's from The Lighthouse.
I knew that. Yeah. I was trying to remember why do I know what that's
from. Why'd you have to spill your beans?
Yeah. My stupid poison brain was like, is that I think you should leave sketch? And then I was like, well, Hal doesn't watch I think you should leave. So
nope. Willem Dafoe yells it.
Also for my birthday, my wife got me a t-shirt from I Think You Should Leave, which is the most unhinged t-shirt that anyone could get from I Think You Should Leave, which is one of my favorite sketches, which I know you don't watch, but I'll describe it, which is a thing that Tim Robinson does great is the fake infomercial that just keeps going until it gets completely off the rails.
Okay.
And there's one that he does for a home security system. And he starts saying to protect you from this beast that came into his house. And it's like, basically, the premise of the sketch is that a beast came into his house and he was terrified and he lost his job because he got too scared to go to work. And then he found out that his neighbor sent a pig and a Richard Nixon mask. But he has a great line at the end and he says, "My whole life got fucked up because for 30 seconds I thought there were monsters on the world." And my wife got me a t-shirt that says "Monsters on the World" in like a death metal font, like it's
Sick.
a band t-shirt. It is an unhinged t-shirt, but I love it.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Very appropriate. It's almost like she knows you or something.
Right.
Wow. Good job, Jess. All of that said, now we're going to switch gears aggressively.
Hell yeah.
Because we're about to get serious, because this is serious business. Today we are covering how to blow up a pipeline, which is not how to build a pipe bomb, which is what I kept referring it as.
I did type that into Google once, too. I typed that into Google once, and I think I'm on an FBI list now.
I was like, how you could tell that one of my, quote-unquote political conversion pathways was like anarchist folk punk communities in South Florida. But we're not covering how to build a pipe bomb. Today we're covering up how to blow up a pipeline, the film. So we lead into this. I want to talk a little bit about what is referred to in the research literature as high-risk activism. So I have to say that this is a topic that I've been really looking forward to us discussing. I think that anyone who has any serious interest in transformative politics has to grapple with questions of diverse tactics, revolutionary violence, and their potential role in spurring social, political, and economic change. If you devote any significant time at all to understanding the histories of the kind of two dominant ideological pillars of leftist agitating in the 20th century, that would be anarchism and Marxist-Leninism, you run into cadres of people who have believed that escalation and some combination of property damage and taking up arms are necessary tools. I approach this topic with fascination, academic curiosity, some fear, some titillation, respect, a melange of contradictory feelings and thoughts that drives me to try and comprehend it more fully. So, who are the movements that are, or what are the movements rather, maybe is what I should have written there, that are most likely to engage in this kind of clandestine activity? So throughout this, I'm going to cite a combination basically of academic journal articles, news coverage, and then some anarchist writings from organizations that do a lot of prisoner support, political prisoner support. So there's going to be a huge source list that we'll drop in the description of the episode, as well as on our Twitter, /X, whatever account,
Twix.
So if you're interested in those things, I would encourage you to follow up on them. Okay, so let's go back. So who are the movements that are most likely to engage in this kind of clandestine activity? So Zwerman et al. 2000 argued that the following conditions need to be met. Number one, there needs to be an explanatory load-bearing ideological framework. An example of this would be anti-imperialism for the New Left. If you're not familiar, the New Left was used to refer to usually U.S. movements in the 60s and 70s, kind of the harder edge of the hippie movement, right? It's Weather Underground, for example. Students for Democratic Society, the OGs. This anti-imperialism from the New Left drew on Che's interpretation of Lenin's ideas of vanguardism. And it allowed them to conceive of guerrilla struggle as the leading charge of the revolution, where issues of party and the kind of more bureaucratic running of the economy and state were secondary to the revolutionary impulse itself. Right? So again, Che there being Che Guevara. Big inspo. And by load bearing there, what I mean is that the ideological framework justifies violence, basically. Okay. Or can justify violence. An example of this for kind of anarchism would be the idea that it's necessary to disrupt interdependent relationships between the powerful and the powerless, and that there are the people below are not actually powerless because they're tied into these interdependent relationships with the elite. Another necessary condition, according to Zorman et al. 2000 studies, was that state repression has to be present. Examples of repression, and when I refer to repression throughout this, and when Craig talks about repression throughout this intro, what we're referring to is the state surveilling, arresting, engaging in violence, like, for example, pepper spraying or dropping bombs on activists, right? Infiltrating activist networks, all of this kind of stuff. And also that there has to be, for the movement itself, a heightened sense of urgency for their group specifically, such that they feel like they're compelled right now. They have to take action right this fucking second because the government is coming to crack down on them. Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of this movie kind of combines different storylines and different people who have various reasons for why they might want to engage in this kind of activism. So beyond ideology within a movement, really what predicts who engages in high-risk activism? The number one predictor across research is relational ties. In Doug McAdams' study of Freedom Summer participants, he found those who were more likely to engage in high-risk activism were more likely to display facilitative social factors such as having many organizational affiliations within the movement, having a history in the movement prior to this campaign, and having many friends or relationships in the movement. Basically, people who have history with the movement and are plugged into a supportive, conducive network were more disposed to high-cost, high-risk mobilization and tactical escalation. Other factors McAdams identifies includes biographic availability. How does your life stage and circumstances affect whether or not you can participate, and the development of an activist identity. Intensity of emotional reactions to the underlying grievance is important too.
And as the name high-risk activism would suggest, utilizing these kinds of disruptive tactics and revolutionary violence carries risk. They carry risk to the individual. I think that examining the 2020 uprisings is really instructive here. There were 4 activists in Arkansas who were targeted with intensive surveillance and eventually convicted of charges pertaining to breaking of windows and throwing Molotov cocktails into empty police cars. To be clear, no people were hurt whatsoever during the course of the things they were charged for. Mujir Benjamin Lungho was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison and nearly $90,000 to be paid in restitution to the state. Okay, for arson. Several of his co-defendants were sentenced to 18 months each. I, again, really want to encourage you to read through the sources that we'll link in the description and on Twitter to read more about their cases. Also, I have some of the links to their GoFundMes for their commissions while they're in prison. And if you have any monies, I would encourage you to do that so they can talk to their friends and loved ones on the phone or send email, which all costs money if you're not familiar with how prison works. And also so they can get food and hygiene products, other things that they need. So there are ways that you can contribute to help make these folks' experiences in prison a little easier if that's something you're inclined to, which I would encourage you to do.
Please do. And in the contemporary U.S., the government clips the wings of radical movements through aggressive, militarized policing and prosecution. The Movement for Black Lives released a report called Struggle for Power, the Ongoing Persecution of Black Movement by the U.S. Government, that analyzes 326 criminal cases from August 31st, 2020 to October 25th, 2020, in which federal charges were filed against protesters. Key findings of the report include that 92.6% of the cases could have been charged under equivalent state or local law, and the federal penalties for 88% of the cases were clearly harsher. 72 cases, approximately 22.1%, involved charges with mandatory minimum sentences. Demographic breakdowns were only available for 89 of the 326 criminal cases. However, 52% of the defendants identified as black, and of the black defendants, 91% were male.
And in addition to the individual level impacts, obviously each of those folks that is in prison is removed from the moment, from the moment for sure, but also the movement is what I meant to say. So it has individual level impacts of repression, right? But these acts of repression by the state also has a chilling effect on the movement as a whole by fragmenting organizing networks and instilling fear, right? Anyone who's ever fucking organized on any level knows that there's constantly someone who's like, what if that person's a cop, right? Like, and it totally just shakes your ability to organize on a fundamental level, that there's this constant fear, right? That you're at risk of repression. So within a liberal rights-oriented system, Zerwig et al. 2000 notes that there are costs to going underground. So oftentimes when a movement or a segment of a movement decides to engage in, again, things that we can conceive of as high-risk activism, that involves going underground, not being as publicly visible, not holding public meetings, right? These kind of things, not engaging the media, etc. And when a movement does that, the underground segment loses the support of the movement as a whole, including a mass mobilized base and resources, right? The benefits that come from having a lot of people present. It also loses the benefits of democratic exchange, of debate and the flow of ideas, and of not being restricted to insularity. So how does high-risk activism end? We've just hinted at some, like, mostly negative possible outcomes, obviously, with repression, jail or prison sentences, or with betrayal when some elements turn snitch to save their own hide. But these are not the only outcomes.
On an individual level, Zwerman and Steinhoff find that those who have served time due to their activism may use the legal support network of lawyers and advocates who sprouted up around their incarceration as a safe but distant means of continuing to engage the broader movement once they are free. Those who are in prison for life, such as members of the Black Liberation Army like Jojo Bowen, whose initial sentences were increased due to escape attempts and deaths associated with them, channeled their purpose by doing consciousness raising and political education work on the inside. Some established organizations like the Free Alabama Movement and coordinated strikes and boycotts to agitate for improved conditions for incarcerated people.
Some might measure whether their objectives are met in the short term. In an incident most analogous to what we'll see and talk about in the movie, Jessica Resnick caused a 4-month delay in the DAPL,
Dakota Access Pipeline.
Nice. In 2016. She got 8 years due to a terrorism enhancement that was added for blowtorching holes and setting fire to excavators. Now, I'm not ascribing any interpretation to Jessica herself here, but one might look at that and say, hey, those are 4 months without poisonous extraction. You know, maybe it didn't end it, but it did something concretely, right? Some might define success in a more diffuse way. If we take it back to Che, and they see their work as tied to the global fight against anti-imperialism and contributing inch by inch to remaking a new world. As abolitionists often say, like brick by brick, right? Prisons got built brick by brick and they need to be torn down brick by brick. Who knows what new activists or revolutionaries might be inspired, or how one's actions might cascade into others' actions. For those fiery dreamers imagining beyond the current limits of polite politics, quote-unquote high-risk activism, it's an assertion of agency and determination in the face of elite domination. It's an outcry that the tide is not so inexorable after all, that there are options available, even when risk and cost are great, that repression is not inescapable, and frankly, even if it is, that sacrifice is not meaningless, that hopelessness and inaction are not compulsory ironclad givens, that the arc of history bends towards justice with a little help from its friends, the vanguard, the few, the proud, the pissed all the way off, all the way over the edge. Now with that, let's get into it.
Yeah. So we watched How to Blow Up a Pipeline, It is the incendiary 2022 thriller from director Daniel Goldhaber. The film centers on a clandestine group of righteously angry Americans, all with different reasons for loathing the American empire, who decide to disrupt the world economy by targeting the pipeline of a multinational oil conglomerate. The plan is to cause such a disruption in the world's economy and oil supply that it rouses the average Joe to question why so much of their lives are dictated by capital and shifting numbers on a stock ticker.
So the plan?
The plan is to detonate a bomb, or I guess 2 bombs, in key parts of this pipeline. But because they are... environmentally conscious and every other thing, they do not want to do so in a way that will spill any oil and cause an ecological disaster. So their plan is to first turn off the oil pipeline, then blow up the pipes near their highest point so the oil doesn't leak once the pipes are destroyed. And most of the movie is kind of framed around this plan. And all intents and purposes, it's not that... That's what I really liked in this movie, is that the plan is fairly simple, but it's the stakes are so high that it still feels like it does feel like an Ocean's 11 style heist where it's complicated and intricate, but the plan is simple, but the stakes are so well developed that those moments of is the strap gonna break or whatever feel so immediate and urgent. I don't know. I'm jumping ahead, but I guess I'm jumping right into our next point, which is, what is our general assessment? Did we like this movie?
I fucking love this movie.
Yeah, I love this movie too.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, I had no clue what this movie was about other than what the title would betray, that some motherfuckers are gonna blow up a pipeline. That's all I knew. And yeah, this shit was awesome. I really, really liked this movie.
Yeah, my only real complaint about the movie is that I don't like that it has this kind of aha ending where several of the people think that they are protecting everyone else and sacrificing themselves and getting away with it. That most of the group gets away with it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's realistic at all in the age of government surveillance.
Oh, that anyone would get away with it? Yeah.
Maybe not that no one would get away with it, but just the idea that 2 women would sacrifice themselves essentially for it, and that the government would be happy that the case is closed.
Yeah.
I think that's a little silly, but every other part of the movie I loved, including these very clear pathways into recruitment. I love that the movie is organized that way. If I was still teaching collective behavior social movements, I absolutely would be teaching this movie to talk about those pathways. And I think that the movie filmically is really wonderful as well. The music in it, the droning music, really adds to that sense of the heist. The fact that it feels like a taut thriller that obviously is very political, but it doesn't it feels like it could be exciting for someone to watch who doesn't care about that element of
for
it.
sure.
And I think there's some really nice performances in it that feel weighty and emotional, but don't turn schlocky.
Right. Yeah. And I think let's mention what the framing device is basically this group has figured out this plan where they're going to blow up this pipeline to disrupt the economy, and the movie is basically framed around the 24 hours that it takes to execute this plan, but it jumps back and there's maybe close to a dozen people involved in this plan, and the movie is framed around their individual stories for how they got involved in the movement. So really the action of the movie is maybe, again, 24 hours, the assembling of the bombs, the planting of the bombs, but so much of it is also how each individual person came to be a part of this group. And it's I really like that framing device, and I don't know. Again, I just really like this movie, and I don't know what I was expecting from this movie, but it kind of blew out my expectations in general.
Yeah, I think that the movie takes the concerns of the characters that it depicts seriously.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that something that is hard about depicting social movement activity on film is that if you are not embedded in an organization, group, movement, whatever level or tier you want to focus on, that sometimes that ideological framework that we were talking about at the beginning of our description, if you're not in it, if you're not in like deep in the sauce, it can come off as overly idealistic, detached from a broader reality. And I think that the movie does a really good job of demonstrating like why all of these people separately are invested in that, and doesn't like cast them aside or judge them for it.
And I think the movie's the most powerful because it doesn't describe like any one ideology to why someone would want to do this. It is kind of a combination of so many different paths of the American life that would eventually like have the American empire fuck you in a way that you would want to do this. Like it doesn't feel, in a movie that could so easily feel preachy, like, do you know what I mean? Like, even if it's something, I don't know, I don't like a preachy movie. Like, if I feel like I'm being preached at, even if it's something that I agree with, I'm immediately turned off, and this movie never approached that level to me. Like, it just was... Fuck, I lost the thread of what I was saying. But
it
like,
asks you to step into the motivations of the characters.
Right.
As opposed to like projecting their motivations onto you.
Rather than them monologuing and like saying like, I'm doing this because, you are immediately kind of brought into the movie because of these characters.
And the person that honestly we see doing that the most, which I think is kind of funny, is Sean, whose pathway into, or like the recruitment into this network is maybe the least personal.
Right, because he's like, in like a documentary crew or whatever.
Well, and before that, we see him in a group with Sochi on the college campus. And it's like, he's kind of like, I have this general ideological preference, or like his motivation is more purely ideological.
Whereas
a
lot of
the
theirs
documentary,
are more like
there's a personal
direct
impact.
Responses to things.
There's a precipitating event that directs them toward in this direction.
Well, do we want to kind of break down these characters and kind of what those events are that bring them into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I think the closest thing the movie has to a protagonist is probably Sochi. And she is a character who we don't get a lot of backstory on, but we know that her mother passed away, and she passed away during some sort of heat wave brought about by a direct result of climate change, basically.
Yes, and I think the other interesting thing about her is that she's someone that the first time that we see Sochi, she's in the college group with Sean, who we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. And so she's someone that I think has like multiple access points. So kind of like, we were talking about in the description, it's usually not, when people get recruited into doing something like this, it's not like a single decision or a single touch point. It's like she's like, her exposure on college campus probably shifting some things. She met and organized with people that were leading her down a certain path of activism. Her mother dies,
and then she has this tragic,
and then she has this tragic experience, and it's affecting her classwork because we see her having a conversation with Theo, where she says that she's thinking about dropping out of school because she can't do it anymore. Right? Like, there's a lot of loaded onto her that's on her back, building and pushing her in a direction. It's not one single act or thought.
Yeah. And then Sean is kind of like her, probably her closest friend of the group, but he is the guy that is kind of more purely ideological, that got turned on to all this because he was shooting a documentary about people basically, shooting. He's the sound guy in the documentary.
And he didn't get turned on to it that way. He says he did that. He took that to meet other people.
Yes.
So he gets turned on, I think, just at college is supposed to be the inclination. And it's kind of like he and Sochi are really the spark. Like, they're the two people that have the idea, and they're kind of on the hunt to discover other people that they can trust do this. But I agree, he's definitely more ideological, and he says that he takes a job as a boom mic operator on a documentary to meet people who have stories of being negatively impacted by the oil industry.
Yeah. And one of the people he meets is this guy, Dwayne, who is just this kind of blue collar farmer who is basically pissed off and angry because his land was acquisitioned by the government under the laws of eminent domain, basically. So
to build the pipeline
itself. Yeah. So that's how Dwayne, this kind of I really like Dwayne, like that performance a lot. Like it doesn't get like crazy preachy, but you get the idea that he's kind of probably politically opposite a lot of the people
in the vein of a lot of the other people he's organizing with,
which I think is a great idea that the movie has to like incorporate people who are not like super loud leftist folks to show like how this is kind of fucking over everyone in that it would consider them working class or anything like that. And Dwayne kind of represents that. This guy that is, if we had to like, I would guess maybe he voted for Trump or at least like thought about it, but he is this guy that,
or honestly maybe didn't fucking vote. Is like
right, more likely probably,
because he just seems like deactivated. The thing that has pushed him over the edge is he says multiple times, this land has been in my family for generations, and the government took it from us, so it's like he is pushed to the brink, not necessarily by the environmentalist angle or by like global capital, it is personally driven, and he just simply, I think, sees that temporarily there's harmony between his mission and the people he's working with.
Yeah, which is a good juxtaposition with another one of the people in the group, which is Michael, who is a like Native American guy who is also kind of involved in this for a bit of like revenge, for lack of a better word, but his is more generational, the oppression of Native Americans in general. Like him and Dwayne to me have kind of the same spirit, even if they're coming at it from different angles. But Michael's also the bomb expert. He's the one that can build the bombs itself. Those scenes are great.
Those scenes are wild. It shows Michael basically, another character, I think maybe it's Sean, refers to him as being on Boom Talk.
Boom Talk,
like he is
like
using
bomb builders on TikTok.
Him building various aspects of a bomb and learning and like the foibles of that.
Yeah.
I thought that was again, like, this movie is not naturalistic in the way that it films the characters and the music that it uses, but it does a good job of making their evolution and transitions narratively and their characterizations feel natural.
Yeah, and there's so many moments that like are really funny and how they like cut or integrate their stories. Like the way we get like there's a lot of flashbacks kind of showing you like the action of the movie is basically a 24-hour period leading up to them assembling, planting, and detonating the bombs. And then we get these flashbacks of how they got in the movement. But there's several of them are cut in a way that I really enjoy, and Michael's is his backstory is cut in a way where he's assembling one of the like blasting caps for the bombs, and it goes off like in his face basically, and you think he's dead, and then it's an immediate cut to his backstory, and then bringing you back in later to reveal that he's not dead. He like fucked up something, but he's okay.
and this smoke is billowing out of this cabin that he's been constructing.
I thought he was dead for sure. I thought that was
same.
like a
Same. But yeah, I agree. Those cuts, it really those fast cuts that then leaves strings dangling where there's stuff unresolved until later. Yeah. And it really leads to that sense of like, this is a heist. Like it's a crime movie about people trying to accomplish something, and like the ideological content is important, but it follows genre conventions, even though the movie doesn't really look like it belongs in that box.
Yeah, because the heist aspect of it itself is so short and so brief, but like milked for every like moment of tension, and it's really good. The like actual heist scenes themselves, and so much of it just revolves around like literally a broken strap of a thing that they're trying to connect the bomb to,
right? Or them like creating the various components of the bomb.
Yeah. Or almost fucking it up because Rowan and Logan got too horny when they were supposed to. I did like those characters too, but so let's finish like rounding out those characters. I just mentioned Rowan and Logan, who are the like two lovers who are kind of involved in previous movements of activism, and I'm forgetting now what Rowan gets caught for. What were they doing?
So this is like the thing that's a little unclear to me is whether or not what they're doing in the moment is movement related at all. It kind of just looks like vandalism.
Right, yeah.
But like Rowan and Logan are wearing like balaclavas.
And they talk about it as if it's a part of some
kind of like vandalism something, and Rowan gets caught and obviously makes a deal with the cops, with the FBI specifically, to be released early, and they establish between the two of them being Rowan and Logan, that they're going to set up a situation to entrap other people so that Rowan doesn't have to turn on any of her existing friends.
Right. Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Also, I'll say, Lucas Gage, who plays Logan, is like the only actor that I recognized in this movie whatsoever. I did eventually look up Sochi and realize that I knew her from something else, but her hair was longer, and so I just didn't recognize her. But Lucas Gage, who plays Logan, is in American Vandal.
Who's he in American Vandal?
I
watched the shit out of American Vandal. Who did the dicks?
Brandon Galloway?
Was he part of the Wayback Boys? That was the gang of boys that they didn't like to shit at what's-his-face's mom's house because he had that cushy toilet seat. So they went to Precious Moments to take a dump.
Yeah, I didn't watch it, so now I look dumb.
Oh, did you really not watch it? Shit, I just explained some. Okay, so.
I do not care about spoilers. That is the thing. I actually don't know if I've ever talked about this on the pod, but I don't give a single fuck about spoilers on any level. The only time when no one should ever spoil something for me is if I am walking into a movie theater to watch something. If you spoil something for me as I'm walking into the theater to watch it, that is fucked up. The rest of the time, I fully embrace it. My sister and I, like, as kids, and we'll still do this when we have an opportunity to, we'll just spoil things for each other. Like, that's just like one of our love languages, is just like, oh, you haven't watched this? Let me describe it for you.
You gotta watch American Vandal. It's so fucking funny.
Like, I feel like maybe that's something that Mike.
Yeah, so what I brought up, I just rambled about a bunch of weird shit that happened in American Vandal, but it's one of my favorite plot points that I love bringing up is, like, if you don't know what American Vandal is, it is a Netflix, like, mockumentary of a true crime series that
it's about these drawing dicks.
The crime is completely ridiculous. Someone spray painted a bunch of dicks on a bunch of the teachers' cars at a high school, but the conceit of the movie is that it's taking it deadly, deadly, deadly serious as a crime. And there's one recurring point where, like, someone's alibi is that he was at his friend's house and his friend's mom has one of those cushion toilet seats, and he hates taking a dump on his on the cushion toilet seat, so he was at an antique store nearby called Priceless Moments taking a dump when the crime happened because he doesn't like sitting on a cushion toilet seat.
Fuck. Lucas Gage is also in The White Lotus in the first season as a guy that worked.
Okay. Yeah,
he's in Euphoria, which we've talked about before. That's not my thing. And also he's in You. Briefly. The thing that honestly I know him most for is number one, being an obsession of I Love You, Jared, one of my best friends of all time, and two, because he is a tabloid mainstay. One, because he's like a young hot gay man, but also because he did something pretty insane, which was get married to a hairdresser and divorce him in the same year.
Hell yeah.
So last year they like announced that they were getting married and then got divorced in the same year. So that is what I know him from. Everyone else in this movie, I was like, oh, new person, what's up?
I just know him from this. That was, I guess I did watch White Lotus. I just don't remember him specifically.
His face. So we've talked about that. The other folks that we haven't talked about, their origin stories would be Theo and Alicia.
I love them.
So Theo. Oh, I lied. I know the actress who plays Theo.
Yes.
Because have you seen American Honey?
I have not seen American Honey, but I know that
yeah, she stars in
yeah.
American Honey, and she's delightful in it. An Andrew Arnold film, unfortunately, also stars Shia LaBeouf, but it's worth watching. Very classic, like indie movie about. Honestly, maybe we should cover it at some point because it's kind of in the vein of like the Florida Project, except instead of being about children like living a poverty impacted life in motels, it's about like young adults,
lower class Malays in general.
Well, no, I mean it's about them, like they live in motels and stuff. It's just they're not children.
Okay.
And they travel.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the actress that plays Theo stars in American Honey. But Theo has a rare form of leukemia that's due to corporate pollution that she's been awash in since she was a child. There's a really notable scene where she tells a story about dancing in acid rain and like continuing to do so.
Yeah.
Fucked up and like, whoo, right in the heart. And also her love, side note, I really love that this movie like really puts forth a lesbian love story. And it's one of like 17 beautiful emotional things happening in this movie. It just, again, feels like natural and embedded in what the movie's presenting. But her love is Alicia. Alicia is one of the only characters, maybe the only, that actually expresses doubt about the plan. She is a waitress. We see her like working hard and trying to kind of support her and Theo. We also see her volunteering in a soup kitchen. Like she's embedded in her community and she cares about suffering, but she is really questioning whether or not they should do this, and not really from like a political, like it's ethically wrong, but more so like, why are you sacrificing what little life you have
to do this?
left to do this?
Yeah.
And I really thought their love was quite tender.
Yeah, I do feel like they're
their
kind
story
of
a lot.
Even though I do think Sochi is more of the like protagonist of the movie, I think that Theo and Alicia are kind of the like beating heart of the movie, the kind of the pathos, I guess, of the movie. And they're both really good. Also, Alicia's the only one who gets injured of the group, which when they're planting the bomb, the barrel they're using falls on her foot and she gets injured. And I kind of thought the movie was going to go away where she was going to like express reservations at that point or
refuse to continue.
Right, but she doesn't, which is a thing that I thought was like pretty powerful too. Yeah.
I do agree. It kind of drove me fucking crazy though that they did it to her right leg. And then a key part of the ending of the movie and them getting away is her driving. I'm like, just do it to her fucking left leg.
Yeah, because she has to drive to like get away.
She keeps saying, like she says repeatedly towards the end of the movie, it's okay, I have another leg. And it's like, yes, but your left leg in order to drive has to cross over your right leg. Right. And her injury was a compound fracture to the shin.
Put it up on the dash. And
so that was just... Side note, not related to the
quality
of the movie. It was driving me insane. I was like, why didn't you just do it to the other leg? This would have been so easy to do this to the other leg. It just drove me like a little bit fucking insane.
Yeah.
We do see, she's not the only person that gets injured though. Logan gets shot.
Oh, that's right. He does get shot. And I guess Michael detonates a bomb in his face.
After, we see them, so they all converge and meet at this cabin. They build all the elements. As we've talked about, there's like some missteps where Michael almost explodes everyone. It ultimately ends up fine. They are able to enact their plan. They establish and set up the bombs. They drop one of the bombs on Alicia's leg. She gets injured, but still they're able to, the plan goes off, and Rowan and Logan are in a separate location to turn off the oil.
Right, because a part of what they're concerned is they don't want to cause like an ecological disaster by blowing up the pipeline and then just having the oil leak everywhere. Yeah.
So what happens is after each bomb is set up, they set off a firework. And so after the second firework happens, Rowan and Logan are supposed to turn off the oil pipeline, and then they will indicate that the bombs are ready to explode. But during that process, there are oil field workers that show up to do some kind of routine check and to look for a drone that has gone missing.
This is great. I like that.
And during that situation, Logan ends up getting shot. Now, thankfully, kind of everything still continues. Rowan's able to turn off the pipeline and indicate that to them. The bombs go off, and she and Logan escape to a motel, at which point Rowan communicates to the FBI agent, I've got them. This is exactly the location where they are. And at this point, Sochi and Theo have established themselves back at their original location. And this is what I was alluding to, or I wasn't alluding. I was straight up referencing earlier, that basically they're setting up a situation where Rowan is telling the FBI agent that it's just the two of them.
Right.
And they're ready, they're at this location and they can go get them.
Rowan's basically been feeding them bogus information the entire time to kind of craft the narrative behind the bombing the way that the group wants it to be crafted.
Right.
Yeah.
And it does lead to some interesting narrative tension, because throughout the movie, you're or at least, again, for me, who's hyper suspicious of everyone, the second she pulled out a razor phone, and I'm like, this takes place, I was like, she's a fucking narc.
Yeah.
The second friend Jared and I were watching this, we watched it simultaneously, and we're chatting about it. I was like, the second she whipped out the razor phone very early in the movie, I was like, that bitch is a narc. And then the next scene it showed that she was a narc.
Yeah.
And so you think oh, she's a narc, and then it's oh, she's setting them up, and then it's oh, wait, she is setting them up, but it's intentional, and the movement knows, the group knows. And so then what happens is Theo and Sochi set off a bomb, they blow up the cabin where to
get rid of evidence of everyone else, but also as kind of a exclamation point on the statement,
it's us, it's the two of
us.
They're
supposed to get caught in that moment or whatever. And I guess let's talk about what their plan is from there. We don't really see much after that, but we know what the plan is, and it's mostly Sochi's plan to kind of become the martyr that can loudly at her trial and at whatever point vocalize why they did this, and I think she verbalizes early on that the hopes are that it might inspire others to do something similar.
Yeah. So I think this is another place where the movie, I don't know. It's hard to, again, judge something by some external metric, but I think it's a place where the movie is weaker, because it's interesting to me that Sean, there's a scene early on when they've all converged on the cabin where Sean makes reference to Che. He explicitly talks about Che. There's a reason why I highlighted Che's interpretation of Lenin in the intro, is because a lot of times this idea of vanguardism is kind of what is, or it can be, an ideological justification for doing this kind of action. But many of the critiques of Che, both at the time and later, were that Che underemphasized building the party such that there was a group of people, or a mass of people really, and institutions available to build the project that the revolution was initiating.
Right.
And now you may disagree with Stalinism. You're right, and I'm not necessarily saying that Stalinism is the path forward, but that is what Stalinism is maybe best known for in a positive reading of Stalinism would be to say you need to build the apparatus that is going to channel the revolution as it happens.
Yeah.
And these motherfuckers don't do anything like that, right? Like they instead operate off of this like very wishy-washy kind of misinterpretation maybe of Che idea of like, if I light the fire, you'll light your fire too, and like then our fires will join together and cause the bonfire. And it's like there's no
it is possibly
mechanism.
Like overly optimistic in that sense.
Yes,
almost.
Yeah. There's no mechanism, apparatus, party, etc. to like latch on to what they're doing.
Right.
And so they're just like left standing.
Yeah.
With the ramifications of what they've done.
Yeah, and I think like I guess I kind of like that a little bit because there is no like the movie ends basically with their arrest, the blowing up the pipeline. We don't see what happens afterwards, whether they were successful in the sense that it did inspire that. But I
mean, maybe we see Sochi looking sad as fuck in a prison cell.
That's true. Yeah, we do see that. Yeah. So maybe it didn't work the way she wanted it to. But yeah, I lost the thread. That's the second time this podcast I've lost the thread on what I was saying. I guess that like it does seem like we get their kind of pure like ideological reasons, and we don't see like whether or not it was successful in that sense, I guess. And to me, like it is still like it is representative of the way that they feel, and maybe they are too idealistic, maybe they are too optimistic, and that doesn't happen. But I do think it is representative of the way like people in those engaged in that high risk activism, like their intentions, I guess, even if maybe those intentions don't ever come to fruition or aren't realized the way that they hoped they were. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, okay. It does. And I do think that it like unfortunately reflects the reality for sure. A lot of people who feel so moved, right? And when also about to tell a little bit of a story, and I'll preface this by saying my experience is nowhere near anything like this.
I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't know if you want to talk about it.
It's nowhere near anything like this because my arrest was related to like decisions within an action as opposed to like some larger overarching
plan or like scheme or whatever.
Yes, scheme or tactic or strategy, even in a broader sense. And also it wasn't high risk on the level that like there was planned violence or property destruction or anything that. But I want to raise
in the sense that you got arrested.
I was arrested and slammed on the ground by TPD, and had bruises all over my body. But I want to raise it because it was stuff that I thought about a lot when trying to make decisions about the outcomes of the intended outcome of my case, which is that after I was arrested in September of 2020, with a group of other people, there were a lot of conversations about, do you take diversion? Like what should be the outcome of this? Should we fight it? And there were a lot of things that I consumed or people that I talked to and ruminated on while trying to make a decision. But one of the things that I reflected on a lot was some of these sources that I really encourage that people like look at, especially if you have any level of engagement in a movement whatsoever. If you have not looked at things like the Prisoner Solidarity Movement or the Anarchist Black Cross Federation or some of these other organizations that do inside-outside organizing and work with political prisoners, people that have done things way more intense and radical than anything I'm talking about that I have done, right? I'm not claiming to be on their level, but is like how many people are essentially left in the lurch for political activity that they've engaged in, and that they don't have support, and that there's not like a movement behind them after the state has nailed them to the wall.
Right.
And so I think that there is something very realistic in what's being depicted and how to blow up a pipeline on that level. But it left me, like I said, wanting, a a little bit more, because it seemed like there was this very like idealistic vision of like, oh, the two of us are going to throw ourselves in front of the bus, and at the end of the day, like, that's not how the state operates. The state is going to hunt down every single one of those motherfuckers and again give them terrorism enhancement charges, and destroy their lives and destroy their families' lives and take their property and require that they pay $100,000 that they can never put forth. And it's really limited vision to underestimate our opponents by thinking that the best case scenario is going to happen.
And the movie does address that at one point when they're all like kind of talking about what they want from that, and Sochi basically lays out this very idealistic version where she's gonna like turn the world around, and someone says like, oh, just like in the civil rights movement where they made like every revolutionary act, they rewrote it to sound non-violent, and like that it wasn't basically like changing what the act itself was. So I think the movie is kind of aware of that too. Like I think I don't know if the movie itself fully agrees with Sochi, and I think that's really interesting too.
Oh yeah. And I think there is something again that's naturalistic in that outcome, because like, again, you may or may not agree with Stalin. I'm not saying, but I don't think one can argue that he wasn't dominant and able to challenge Western chauvinism, right?
Yeah.
And that plan was about combining displays of physical force and threat of physical force with a party apparatus that could mobilize people en masse, right? And I'm not trying to say like Sochi needs to aspire to be Stalin, but I do think it reveals like the weaknesses of what is ultimately an anarchistic perspective, even though the movie doesn't label her that way.
Right. Yeah.
That's like more ideologically where she's coming from. Like the weakness of that perspective as it relates to measuring against, does it achieve your outcomes, yes or no, is that like there is no structure to like it's like shooting the fireworks into open air, you know, they just dissolve. Like what is catching them, what is reflecting them back, what is magnifying them, which I say that to just say that's how I feel about whether or not that's the metric I use to measure whether or not a tactic is meaningful.
Sure.
Not that the movie like should or should not speak to that. Like I think it generally does a pretty good job, but I do think the characters are quite idealistic and not necessarily rooted in a fully fleshed out ideology.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I think the character who is the most like fleshed out is Dwayne, like a guy that is almost absent of ideology beyond the fact that the government has encroached on like his family, his land, his property. I don't know. I really was fascinated by that character. As mentioned before on this podcast, I am a little bit fascinated with like right-wing talking points, and I think Dwayne is almost like
it's kind of like that family. What the fuck is the name of, you know who I'm talking about? The dudes.
Oh yeah, up in Washington. Fuck. Any other time.
The one got his face twisted off by a tire. It's not off. It's still on his head, but
the God damn, what are their names? They're nutty. I love those guys. Damn it.
While you look this up, I'll just say
Bundy.
The Bundy family.
Yeah.
They were more interested in being politically exploited and like aligning themselves ultimately.
Yeah.
But there is like this interesting intersection,
like
of like critique of state and where that's coming from and how it's directed.
Yeah, how they got there is real weird and bizarre, but there is like a somewhat of a nugget of truth behind what they are angry about, I guess. Yeah.
But he was like, the character Dwayne was making me think about them.
Oh, for sure. But the Bundys were never as directly fucked over in the way that Dwayne was.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The Bundys were just like, I don't want to pay for this fucking taxes and shit.
Just like evoking the idea of like there
white,
are
rural,
like where's the overlap?
Right. Yeah. The Dwayne character was very, very interesting. I liked him a lot. My chair just started making an abundance of squeaking noises. I'm sorry if that came up on the mic.
Yeah.
But
so I wrote a list of where everyone ended up.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to say, Sochi, related to what you were saying about like her articulation of that final vision, it like releases as a video, right? There's a video that goes out.
Right, that she had pre-recorded as kind of a like, if you're seeing this, then
I'm like dead or in prison, and this is my manifesto. And one of the things that she says in it is, this was an act of self-defense. And I do think that is a powerful message for the movie to let linger, even if she is ultimately suffering because frankly, and again, I think like maybe they're one of the most important lessons of high risk activism, and that I try to communicate a little bit in that intro, is that there are people for whom the sacrifice is worth it. That's not how I live my life, but I am thankful that there are people throughout time and space that have decided that it is.
Yeah,
right?
I couldn't. I'm too scared, honestly.
So I thought that was a really powerful message for her to end on. But where we see everyone end up, Sochi, we see her in prison again, looking sad and scared. Logan and Rowan are partying. I do think there's something interesting there, because one of the things we talked about in the intro is like one of the elements of recruitment are people that have high biographic availability, meaning like if you work 80 hours a week and you have kids, pretty hard for you to engage in high risk activism, right? Like, it's not saying it's impossible. There's like folks get recruited. There's always exceptions to the rule, but you know, they are kind of bum around, fuck off, chase various threads, and they end up doing the very same, partying. Michael is at a store with his mom looking knowingly at him, where she clearly seems to know that he was involved in this fuck shit. Theo's at the hospital, with like intubated, it looks like. I personally interpret it as, because when we see her and Sochi get arrested, they like get hit and Theo gets the shit kicked out of her. So I personally interpret her being in the hospital as it being like not just her cancer, but like it was directly caused by the way she was arrested. Alicia is getting hugged at the church, at the soup kitchen. Sean is definitely being followed by someone, or maybe he's just really suspicious. Either way, it would be fitting for an activist in the situation. And then we see Dwayne with his wife, and then at the very last end cap, which maybe does speak to that hope of triggering other people, we see people setting up bombs to blow up some rich people's yachts.
Yeah, hell yeah.
With like the kind of manifesto that we see Sochi with at the very beginning of the film.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this movie was cool. I didn't know.
I will definitely watch it again.
Yeah,
like,
I didn't know what to expect from it. Like, I knew, based on the title, honestly, I thought we were going into something that was going to be a little preachy, a little on the nose, and I was delighted that it wasn't that. It was like a fucking taut as shit thriller that really, really integrated these stories in a way that was like natural and cool. And yeah, this movie was really cool. I really liked this movie.
Yeah, I agree. It was not as surprising that I expected it to be bad, but it was better than I anticipated, having essentially no expectations.
Yeah, so. I mean, I think that the title is kind of like trolly in general, as like provoking a reaction, and I think sometimes my immediate reaction to that is like, fuck that. Like, you know, like when a movie is like trying to be like
you're appealing to me, and it's like yeah they are though they are.
So I think I was kind of going in with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, but yeah, this shit was cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And again, I really, really want to emphasize for like I think the fourth time that the music in it is very cool.
It's very cool. Yeah.
Go fucking watch this movie. Like
it's really
right now.
Good. Yeah.
Go watch it.
It's really good.
What are you doing?
I haven't. So we spoke of my movie lists earlier,
yes.
and I have not yet put this in the 2022 column.
What's your top 3 in the 2022 column?
I still have it pulled up. We can see where this might slide in. Okay, 2022. My top 3 are The Northman at number 3.
Okay.
Barbarian, which I know we disagree on a little bit. And then my number 1, a movie that I fucking love so much, a movie that feels like it communicates to my soul, which is The Banshees of Inisherin.
Nice. What are 4 and 5? Yeah. I did.
Okay. I don't remember this being this much of a coincidence when I did this, but 4 and 5 are Pearl and X.
Whoa.
It would get up there somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I feel like this would maybe be like 2 or 3 for me had I watched it. I loved The Northman. I really, really liked The Northman when I saw it when Mike and I saw it in theaters, and then we watched it at home a couple of months later whenever it came out, and I was like, damn, I like this even more. And then last Christmas we watched it with Mike's with Mike's mom and his her girlfriend, her boyfriend. That's the gender situation there. And I liked it even more. So I feel like it just keeps it keeps growing on me. Though I gotta say, and it hurts me to say this because I do like her in general.
Bjork.
No, Bjork's great in it.
I was trying to figure out who you were talking about. Anya.
Don't care for Anya in it. And I quite like her in general, but to me, she is totally fungible. She's totally replaceable in that movie. Yeah. You could put anyone in that role and I would be like, yeah, that's fine. Like, she really does not feel like she's doing anything worthwhile in the movie, but I quite like her in general, so it's not.
Me too. And I'll say, if she didn't do anything in that one, then she makes up for it in The Witch, because I love her in The Witch.
Yeah,
she's so good in that,
for sure. Which makes me wonder if like that's how Eggers was like directing her, but it's like what is so great about so much of his work, really all of his work, but specifically The Northman, is how archetypal it is, and archetypes by definition like there's the nuance. It's not it shouldn't be about nuance, basically. And so it's just not present enough. Like, it's not definitive enough of a performance. It just feels like
perfunctory.
Yeah.
Well, other than that, you're doing great, Anya.
In general, I like you.
If you've took those notes, take that into your next movie. But yeah, do we have anything else to add to How to Blow Up a Pipeline?
I don't think so. Just that next episode we're gonna talk about Madawan.
Hell yeah.
And go back to talking about some labor violence. So we're gonna keep the violence train going.
So I have been fairly intentional in not divulging what I do for a living, but I will say this: I have mentioned it several times that the union for which I am a part of, I can't remember, the Florida Education Association. In our district, we just won our negotiation battle.
Woo!
Still not a whole lot of money, but it is a significant amount more than what our last baseline, our final and best offer was. So I'm a little high on that right now. So I'm excited to talk about some union stuff.
Let's get it.
Hell yeah. So we'll catch you on that episode when we talk about unions.
On the flip side.
Bye.